We are speaking about immigration with immigration attorney Chantelle Casillas in Berkeley, California. Counselor, welcome. What happens when I am taken into custody by ICE? Where am I sent?
So when you're taken into custody by ICE, this typically happens in the scenario when someone is caught, doing a criminal act, and then, that police station decides to report the individual who has no status or is not a U.S. citizen to ICE custody and ICE agents. So once you're transferred over to ICE, you'll be sent to a detention facility. There are detention facilities all over the country, and they're different from your non-detained immigration court because obviously you're going to be in a detained setting. And then from there, you will need to most likely file a bond to get out.
What do I do if I think someone I know has been arrested by ICE?
If you think that someone you're close to, or just someone you're looking for has been detained by ICE, there are a few things you can do. There's a tool called the ICE Detainee Locator, and you can just Google it. It should come up online. You can type in your loved one's, first name, last name, filter by state, city where you think they may or may not be detained, and you might get a hit there. Once you get a hit, feel free to try and contact that detention facility and ask to speak to a supervisor there in order to see whether or not your loved one or the person you're inquiring about is actually at that detention facility.
What would be the difference between affirmative and defensive asylum?
So the difference between affirmative asylum and defensive asylum basically begins at, the main question is who's filing, the I-589. If you're affirmatively filing an I-589, that means that you were not caught by ICE. So you're placing yourself affirmatively into proceedings because you want your case to be heard by an immigration judge. If you are defensively filing an asylum application, that means that you were caught by ICE, or let's say you overstayed your visa, and now you're in immigration proceedings. You don't have a choice to be before a judge or the government in presenting your asylum matter. The only reason that people should be placing themselves affirmatively into removal proceedings is if they think they have an extremely, extremely good chance at winning their case. You need to be really, really careful in placing yourself affirmatively into asylum proceedings because inexperienced attorneys will, sometimes place people who don't have a strong claim, and that's called a frivolous claim, and that can later end up really, really hurting you. So make sure you know what you're doing before you place yourself affirmatively into removal proceedings.
And what is the difference between ICE, USCIS, DHS, and CBP?
The difference between ICE, USCIS, DHS, and CBP is that they are all extremely different agencies. So ICE, which stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and USCIS, which stands for United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and CBP, which stands for Customs and Border Patrol, all fall below DHS, which stands for the Department of Homeland Security. USCIS is the organization under the Department of Homeland Security that adjudicates certain types of claims. So let's say you have an asylum case, but you're not before an immigration judge. If you affirmatively place yourself into proceedings, then you get the opportunity to present yourself before an immigration officer that is hired by USCIS, and they may be able to grant you asylum. CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, you will most commonly encounter at the border, obviously, upon initial entry. Let's say you're entering the country without inspection. That is when you will most likely be greeted by Customs and Border Patrol agents. They'll ask initial questions there, and then they'll refer you to the next proper agency to go to. ICE, which stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, there's a couple sister agencies that fall below ICE too, but I'm not going to get into those. For purposes of removal proceedings, When we're talking about ICE, you're typically talking about, the government attorney that's prosecuting your case. So, at your final, let's say asylum individual hearing, it's going to be you, your attorney if you're represented in your removal proceeding, versus the ICE attorney, which represents the government.
What is an ICE check-in and why is this different than immigration court?
So ICE check-ins are extremely important, and a lot of people fail to understand that an ICE check-in is completely separate process from presenting yourself before immigration court. So an ICE check-in is done by, is coordinated mostly by ERO, which stands for Enforcement and Removal Operations. Sometimes, when you're detained at the border, when you're detained at the border, you have to present yourself to, enforcement and removal operations after, like once you get within 60 days, I believe, so that they know that, they can keep track of you haven't absconded, things like that, you haven't moved. It is extremely important that aside from just presenting yourself to your immigration hearings, that you also make sure to reach out to enforcement and removal operations, which falls under ICE, so that they can call you, once a month if that's, their procedure. They'll give you like a code to check in, and they'll make sure you're still at the same address. ICE is also in charge of whether or not, you're going to get to keep your ankle monitor bracelet on, or if they're going to take it off. So it's two separate organizations that you need to keep up to date on your whereabouts.
Counselor, thank you for your time.